Hello and welcome back to the second installment of the self-documentation series. Before I begin tonight's topic, I think it's best if I give you a brief update, at least for those interested, excuse me, on my life, why I was gone for about a week, and then we'll get into what I want to speak about today. So, firstly, as some of you know, I'm currently writing a book about a 419-day solo hike across Europe, a time of great introspection and adventure. And in doing so, I've kind of readjusted or adjusted my sleeping and waking patterns or schedules. So for the past week and a half, I had developed this rhythm where I would usually wake up in the early afternoon and go to bed somewhere around 4 a.m. And I would dedicate the times between 9 or 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. to writing, usually with small breaks in between. And that worked well. Because it facilitated, to a large degree, a very obsessive attitude for the book and the creative process of the book. But unfortunately, that obsessive temperament goes hand in hand with the lack of a sense of obligation towards the rest of my life. And so for the past week and a half, I had been too slow to reply to messages which were rather urgent, and well, I've been falling short on my own expectations pretty much everywhere else except for the book, which can't be. I'm a grown man now, and I have other things to take care of, and well, we all have to be responsible. So, as of today, I'm going back to a normal, or I should say, common, waking and sleeping schedule. So, firstly, that. Now, secondly, I want to share two big wins from last week. One of them being a birthday lunch that I was invited to on Saturday. Rafał celebrated his birthday, and he did so with his closest people. Now, it's an honor to be considered in that circle, but it was also a privilege to see the people Rafał surrounds himself with. I think the people in our lives are probably the best reflection of ourselves. And if you have friends in your lives, if you have friends in your life who you would be comfortable introducing in any room, under any circumstance, at any time, then you're doing something right. And Rafał, I can tell you for a fact, has those people. I'm incredibly proud because it says a lot about him. But also, I had a great time, But I will share one reflection on that day. Rafał and his friends, all of us were the exact same age, essentially. Two couples, and then Rafa and myself, the two singles at the table. With the exception of myself, everyone at the table, I feel like, was exceptionally well educated. At least the gentlemen at the table. I can't really speak for the ladies who accompanied them. But I saw in front of me, at this table, men with whom I had gotten along so incredibly well, especially given the fact that it was the first time we had ever seen each other, spoken to each other. And these were men who had studied at Oxford and Cambridge, Very, very brilliant guys. Ambitious, driven, inquisitive, attentive, very, very attentive. And I have lived a life completely opposite to that, in a way, I'm not particularly I'm not educated at all. I would go so far as to say I'm educated through life, certainly, but not in the conventional sense. And I've lived these adventures and this adventurous and dangerous lifestyle. And so it was interesting to see that despite the fact that I had lived so differently to everyone else at the table, I still felt as though I belonged completely and entirely. That is for one reason. That is partly because the people at the table were very good at facilitating this feeling They embraced me, they listened to me, and they encouraged me to share stories with them. I spoke a lot. I told them stories of how I ended up in jail in Greece and such. Fascinating stuff. Um, but the most important note I have to leave on this lunch was that I left so beautifully invigorated. I felt so much passion for life. And it was all due to just an afternoon with good people. I was all of a sudden, I felt encouraged to grab life by the throat and just create and do and be, and I felt everything will turn out just fine. And all that was brought about essentially by these people. So it goes to show sometimes in life all you really need is to surround yourself with the right people. So congratulations to Rafael and his friends. Um, I'm in awe. Secondly, the second biggest win last week was that I was approached by a big social media company. Um, I was recommended by my good friend Zach Pogrob to this company because they're looking for someone to write their future weekly newsletter. Now, whether or not I get the gig isn't really relevant here. What's relevant here is that I have been granted by the universe the first indication of the fact that my writing is resonating and is being desired. This is the first offer I have ever received for my writing to be paid, or for me to be paid for my writing, which for a writer will always be a huge, huge, huge milestone. And so, whether or not I land a gig with this company, they will forever be in my memory. I'm hyped. I'm going to submit my. They gave me a chance to write something and then to check if they like it, and I'm going to submit that today. Um, we'll see how it goes. So now that's out of the way, let's hop into tonight's topic. As part of my Instagram submissions, Meryl submitted the question, advice on stepping into a new identity. I could be pronouncing her name wrong. I'm not sure. If I am, do let me know. But yes, stepping into a new identity. Again, a very difficult topic, and I'm going to try to split it twofold, and begin with the easier part of it. So let's begin. Firstly, I believe stepping into a new identity could more often than not be understood as not the acquisition of new habits and traits and characteristics and behaviors, but instead rather as the uncovering of old and innate parts of yourself, as the return to things you were passionate about in childhood. I find particularly with creative people, I see this developmental arc in personality where through the means of socialization, particularly when in early adulthood, we adapt to whatever circles we're in, primarily because we're young and inexperienced and want to belong. But in doing so, we'll often submit to a sort of spiritual bankruptcy. We will change ourselves to adapt to our environments. Which I'm not saying is particularly wrong. I'm actually saying it's a good indicator of a healthy human being. But another further good indicator of a healthy human being is then, eventually, somewhere down the line, the implementation of all the passions and interests you had as a child into your adult self. And again, I find this to particularly be the case with creative people. So, I want to note, firstly, to sum it all up, stepping into a new identity doesn't have to mean building something new. It could instead also mean returning to something old. Uncovering of something already innately part of yourself. Now, the second part of this, which is the significantly more difficult one, stepping into a new identity, as you call it, is going to be a very disgusting process. And again, it's not going to be a disgusting process because of all the new traits and behaviors and promises to yourself you'll have to keep, daily showing up. That's going to be a part of the journey, certainly, but when I say disgusting, I mean particularly because you're going to be faced with a lot of resistance. Mainly from people who are already a part of your life. Alex Hormozi has a great quote for this. I have it here written down. The easiest way to change what you do is to change where you are. It's easier to go somewhere else to be someone else than to try and break the gravity of other people's ingrained expectations. Beautiful quote. Now, Seneca has this famous line. I can't recite it perfectly, but essentially what he says is that wherever you go, you go. So if you're unhappy with yourself where you are now, you will be unhappy with yourself wherever else it is you end up. And though that is partially true, I find myself agreeing with both statements, that of Alex and that of Seneca. You see, very often in life, it is the case that we are who we are because we've, to some degree, submitted to the general consensus of we have to behave a certain way to coexist. In most cases, people aren't doing this consciously, but people do place expectations upon you. This could be the case with a family situation, this could be the case in university, this could be the case in any field that you share with people, essentially. But I would argue that if you have a desire to step into a new identity, you are to some degree unhappy with the individual you have been thus far, up until now, or are now at least. And I say that's going to be I say that's going to be disgusting, and I say you're going to be faced with resistance, because more often than not, the people who are already a part of your life are going to, mostly unconsciously, identify your striving for betterment and development and change as the murder of the person they had learned to love, to cherish, to care for. You see what I mean? It's an individual's environment, especially if you're close to someone, could be heavily dependent on your participation in that environment. Your change could, however, mean that your participation will change. Now, in this instance, it's not particularly, I say particularly a lot, fucking hell. In this instance, it's not of relevance if that participation on your behalf will be good or bad. What is relevant is the change. So even though you innately know that what you're striving for, who you want to become, is something better than what you are now, a lot of people very often will somewhere within themselves categorize that as a threat. A threat to the person they've learned to love, the person you are no longer interested in being, but also a threat to an innate part of themselves that they're not addressing. Because your embodiment of a new version of yourself acts as a reminder for this individual that they are not striving for betterment. They are merely tolerating complacency. I'll, I want to illustrate this with an example of my own life. When I returned from the walkabout, my 419-day solo hike across Europe, I was the loneliest I'd ever been, significantly more lonely than I was during the walkabout. And if you know anything about my adventure, you will know that when I left, I deleted all social media, I changed my phone number, and I communicated with handwritten letters. I left for the sake of growth and development and change and solitude, isolation, loneliness. I carried within me this conviction that it is within that I will find what I need. That I need to be equipped with that in order to accomplish whatever it is that I want to accomplish in my life. So when I returned 14 months later, after months of dedication to bettering myself, the way I speak, the way I behave, the thoughts I pay attention to and the thoughts I don't pay attention to, this was 14 months of hard work that no one saw, but again, no one was supposed to see. But I returned with the idea that I'd constantly thought about throughout my travels, which was this new and improved version of me will be able to reintegrate itself into my circles and my community, and I will be of benefit to everyone else. I will be better. I will change not only my life for the better, but everyone's lives of at least those people who partake in mine. Because it is the case that your betterment is of benefit to the world. And I mean the world in both senses. The world globally, as in the world itself, but also when I say world, I mean the cosmos you inhabit, the little bubble that you exist in, your environment. If you dedicate yourself to speaking more precisely, you will, in that process, inevitably so, confront concepts such as truth and lie, or one could take it one step further, heaven and hell. You will inevitably so inhibit a spiritual change. You will undergo a process of spiritual alchemy, in a sense. This is the case if you try to develop your speech, but it's also the case if you try to change your physical appearance for the better, radically. It's the case if you want to all of a sudden double down on education. It's the case if you all of a sudden want to dedicate yourself to your wife and children, or your husband and children, or your husband, or your wife, or your father and mother. Any radical desire for change and betterment, for the sake of betterment, is going to initiate a process of spiritual alchemy. And that process is going to be of benefit not only to you, but it's going to be of benefit to everyone who partakes in your life. Because not only is your process, is your development going to be visible to everyone who partakes in your life, it's also going to be informative. Because the lessons you learn and reap throughout this time, you will then be able to share and give access to those who might need them later down the line. You know? So, to make the argument, stepping into a new identity could also be characterized as making the most of yourself with the limited amount of time granted to you. And that's not a task to be taken lightly. Frankly, because you have this obligation not only to yourself to fulfill your potential and to become the most that you can possibly be, you are also obligated towards everyone around you. Because again, if you have the power to improve people's lives and don't act upon this power through mere complacency, one could potentially go so far as to say that's reprehensible behavior. But now to draw it back, I think that not enough people are around people who change. And so when they all of a sudden are around someone who does change, they don't know how to categorize that as growth. Frankly, again, it's a quote by Alex Hormozi. Most people just recycle the same 12 months every single year and call it life. It comes at a cost. And, these people might not. This resistance that you're being faced with, I said earlier, doesn't have to be um, interpreted as malice, because again, if you and I are extremely close, if you love me and I love you, and I start radically changing by following something within me that is calling for this change, that vision that I have, the calling that I hear, is not accessible to you. All you are seeing is a rapid change in my behavior, and that rapid change in my behavior communicates to you that I'm killing off the person that you love, and you don't know yet if it's for the betterment of my sake and yours. You just know it's a change. And so quickly, unconsciously, it can be the fact that people start distancing themselves from you. And if you're prone to disagreeableness, as I am, you might interpret that in a very negative way, in a way of individual flaw of character, weakness, which very often is the case. I'm going to say quite bluntly. In that time when I returned from the walkabout, quite a few people whom I was close to and whom I had learned to love, they just left my life forever. And I had to pursue them and reach out to them multiple times just to speak to them before hearing that there is no interest in any longer being in contact. So, anyone possesses the mental infrastructure to make of themselves that which they know they could be. But it's difficult. And not only because the process itself is difficult, keeping promises to yourself, again, the daily habits, the change of behavior, bringing light to parts of yourself that you don't necessarily want to visit. But it's also difficult because the people you would expect most support from could very easily find themselves incapable of supporting you. And it is particularly in that time that it's most important that you know how to support yourself. But listen to that calling. Heed that vision. There's a reason why you can see these images in your head. There's a reason why you can hear these voices. There's a reason why you feel these feelings. And there's a reason why these feelings are so powerful. Lean into them. Lean into them wholeheartedly. That's all I can say. But be advised. It very well may be an extremely lonely endeavor. It has been in my case. And God knows, I'm nowhere near where I wish to be. So I don't know how much more of this sort of loneliness I have to walk hand in hand with, But yes, I think I've said the most important stuff. Now, if you're interested if you're really interested in these concepts of developing a new self, stepping into new identities, personas, and such, I'd recommend you study, for example, someone like Kobe Bryant and the development of the Black Mamba. It's a term I think everyone has almost kind of heard, but no one really knows the reasoning behind, the thought behind. But yeah. Before I leave, I will say once again for the end. Stepping into a new identity can be characterized as the making of the most of yourself with the limited amount of time that you have. But it's very important that you do. And it's important beyond reasons of individual vanity and accolades and such. It's not only you that needs your best, it's the world that needs your best. Now, I'm not one to preach, I suppose, I often don't live up to that myself. But I try, and I will continue trying. And I hope you do too. So, do what you know you should be doing. And be bold, be brave. People never tell you that bravery feels like fear. That's the whole concept of bravery, in fact. We consider people brave because they have behaved bravely under circumstances that we would be afraid under. They were too. They just still acted, still behaved. So the next time you tell yourself you'll wake up at a particular time and that time has come, although it's a small behavioral change, getting up out of your bed without hitting the snooze button, it's the building of momentum. And that is facilitating the further development and betterment of this new identity you wish to step into. But be dedicated. Take it seriously. Because again, you're doing this for the benefit of yourself. But in a much larger frame, you're doing it for the betterment of everyone. The whole fucking world. So, that's it from me. I will certainly talk about this in the future again. This is all off the top of my head. I don't have notes that I've prepared except for like a quote every now and then. But I think with time, as I become better and better at this, I'll be able to verbalize these feelings and thoughts more precisely. And I will do so more commonly. So, anyway, hope that was enjoyable. Let me know what you thought in the comments. And as always, please, I invite feedback of any capacity. Hit me up on Instagram or here in the comments. I'd love to know how this was for you. So, all the best. Talk soon. Much love.